Happy Friday, everyone. Sorry for the late start today. So for those of you who don't know, I'm actually head of the graduate council here at Truman State. And last semester, the graduate council came up with this idea to do a potluck lunch on this day today. And they were going to do it from 11:30 to 1:30, which I'm like, well, that's great. He says, okay, well, you can ignore it, or you can organize this, Dr. Barnes. He says, wait a minute. That's not what I agreed to. So I had to actually get everything set up right before class. And so we're taking care of that right now. But that's just a lesson for everybody in life. If somebody makes you the head of an organization, they're going to expect that you're going to organize all the events for that organization. So best suggestion I said, avoid leadership. Just avoid leadership all the time. Yeah. I'm just kidding. Some people are adept leaders. I try my best to be an adept leader. We'll see what happens after today. But I'm excited about today. Today we're going to talk about some Excel stuff. We're also going to talk about some AI stuff. I do think that these are interesting areas for the course, and I do think that this is a valuable conversation to have. Obviously, this is just going to scratch the surface. I don't want anybody to feel any pressure today. When I say an Excel quiz, I probably didn't clarify that. People are asking me, says, what do I need to do to prepare? I said, just show up. This is not a quiz that's graded. This is actually just to kind of see where everybody's at. Traditionally speaking, my students have done fairly well on this. But this is just a series of questions that I found in an online survey about where knowledge of Excel is. I've edited them somewhat because the questions that were in the online survey, some of them were a little bit suspect, and so that's what we're going to be walking through. Then we're going to talk very briefly about AI. We're going to scratch the surface. It's not going to be too much of an introduction, but I do want to talk about hallucinations and kind of setting expectations immediately for AI. But to start, one thing I think I probably mentioned this already, and this is the disclaimer. If I mention anything more than once in this course, you're going to have to just deal with it because I'm an old man and I don't remember when I've told stories. It was like my father, shortly before he passed away, he would tell a story that he told me like 15 times already. And said, no, it's a great story, Dad. Yeah, I learned a lesson from that. So you can just nod your head and say, great story, Dr. Barnes. We all learned quite a bit about it. You know, tell it again to us next week when you've forgotten that you told it to us this week. Yeah. So basically, one of the things that I joke about is I teach through memes. All my slides have just got kind of like pictures on there, and I joke around that. And I do think analogistic learning is really, really important. And the idea behind that is that you take something that's a really complex concept and you try to relate it to something that's like a lot easier to digest, a lot more suitable. And that's where a lot of my jokes come from when I do this. But these are just fun for the sake of fun because there's a website called the Big Four account. Actually, it's a Twitter. I don't know what you would call it, a Twitter account. I guess I'm still using Twitter. It's an X account. That's called the Big Four account. And I don't follow it on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it because I've only got one social media account, and that's Facebook. I wouldn't have that account except that there's stuff that my nieces post, and I'm just too much of a mark not to follow their stuff. But I do follow the Big Four on Facebook, and they post some fun stuff. So they usually put some stuff from some Excel related stuff here. So this is one I particularly like. So this is, if you ever take a course with Dr. Caden, the best way to get in her good graces is to share jokes from Friends. Okay, and this is a joke from the TV show Friends back in the 1990s. All right. So this is Phoebe and Joey talking 12.5, and it says 12.5, but Excel recognizes that as January 12th, 1900 at 12 p.m. All right. Now, the actual joke behind this is, and we're going to find out about this as we move forward in Excel, is that Excel dates are just a numeric conversion. The very first number one, is actually 1900, January 1st, 1900. So if you actually convert a date to a number in Excel, you'll see, okay, this is 40-something thousand days since the first day of 1900. And the question then becomes is, does human history start at the day 1900 according to Excel? And the answer is absolutely yes, it does. Okay, you can't actually type in an 1800 date, at least it won't be acknowledged as an 1800 date. It'll be recognized as a series of characters, slashes, and 1800 in there. So kind of interesting that. Related to that, okay, Optimus, the glass is half full, Pessimist, the glass half empty. Excel, the glass is January 2nd. Yeah, all right. So yeah, type in Excel, and that one's 1-2 or 1/2, it's going to say date conversion. I'm on top of it. All right. Tolerant artificial intelligence taking over. So January, February, Marchuary, April, Mayuary, January. Yeah. So yeah. Now I realize the joke here is February is misspelled. I'm born in February, so I misspelled it for like the first 6 years of my life. But yeah, that's That's Excel trying to do its job right there. Does anybody really get frustrated at the word tools when they auto complete stuff that you don't want it to auto complete, or better yet, auto format? That's the worst right there. Auto formatting just causes me nightmares. Anyway, what gives people feelings of power? Money, status, using shortcuts in Excel. Yeah, so hopefully I will convey some of that power to you all in this course. We'll be talking a lot about some of the Excel stuff, and I'll be showing you some of my shortcuts. The first one that you really need to get down, and I will encourage you if you don't use it already, is Control C, Control X, Control V. Everybody knows those shortcuts right there. Copy, cut, paste. If you know those shortcuts, then you're a long ways away. Now, it's going to be give or take. There's some people use certain shortcuts pretty naturally that I don't use, and there's other shortcuts that I use pretty naturally. Usually navigation shortcuts I think are very valuable, such as using arrow keys or how to actually manipulate the control key in certain situations. But as we're going through this, I encourage you when we start doing the Excel activities next week, if I do something, you say, wait a minute, how did you get from that point to that point so quickly? Stop and say, what did you just do there, Dr. Barnes? And I may say, oh, I held down the control key while clicking on the mouse and I did something like that. So I will try to tell you everything that I'm doing when I do something like that, but sometimes I just do it naturally and don't think about it. So that's something to keep in mind. Something worse than heartbreak. Pound REF. Yeah. Has anybody seen that in Excel? That is, I want to say heartbreaking, but that's not the proper adjective. It's worse than a heartbreak. It's worse than a heartbreak right there when you got that right there. So you see that right there, then things gonna fall apart, especially if you've been working on a spreadsheet for a few days and you come back to the spreadsheet and you make one change and then all your spreadsheet changes to that. It's like, oh, whoa, undo. Yeah, that's a really, really big heartbreak right there. All right, probably the biggest Excel thing they have committed. I don't know if you can see this, but somebody's trying to add all the cells together. So they've got it in brackets and they say D6 plus D6 plus E6 plus F6 plus G6 plus H6, which I guess is technically accurate if you do something like that. I got to imagine whoever did this just really wanted to trigger people's OCD, and I can't look at it very closely for very long because it does trigger my OCD when I see that. So that's certainly problematic. All right. Every company using Excel after spending millions on an ERP system. So yeah, that's kind of the, you look inside the ERP system and what's driving it? Microsoft Excel. Yep, that's the case. We will, on our ERP analysis, we will integrate with some other tools. We're not going to integrate too much with Excel, but I will say this is probably more profound than you might think, because one of the big reasons why we insist on so much Excel in the School of Business and Professional Studies is that the employers are always insistent on making sure graduates have great Excel skills. And if you feel like you've got great Excel skills, I will tell you that will go a long way. You will hear my stories, my rambling anecdotes about how Excel made me made my career much easier, and it will make your career much easier too, having those good Excel skills. Yeah, so that's it for that. Those memes right there. The good news is I've got a whole other set of memes prepared for you guys for AI. Okay, so this is going to our Meme Friday is what we're going to be doing today. But let's go ahead and do our quiz. All right. So here's what I'd like for you to do. We're going to be doing a poll everywhere. So if you've never used poll everywhere, you can do it on your computer, pollev.com. And it's my name except no S at the end. Instead of the S, it's a 114. Or if you want to do it by text, that's fine too. You just send my name with the 114 at the end to 37807 or 37607. Man, I'm really, really regretting getting old. You know, so I have to start wearing glasses just to see things. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and do this first question, and the information, contact information is up here at the top if you're still working on that. But let's go ahead and do some questions here and see what's got up here. So the fast way to add up the column of numbers is to click on the cell below the numbers and do what? Is this the first question? That's the first question. Okay. So what's a fast way to add up the columns? And by the way, I would encourage you, if you're doing these questions or answering these questions and you see answers pop up, don't let the other answers influence your answers. Answer the way you think the answer should be. You can change your answer. I mean, I can't stop you from changing your answer, but this is not for credit. This is just to see where everybody's at. I think if everybody kind of sees the answers and they're saying like, oh, everybody else is going for this answer, I'm going to change my answer, which if you want to do that, that's fine. But again, I'm not grading anybody. I don't know who's putting in these responses. Put it in there. All right. So it's like 100% of our class. So like we started out with a few people are on D, and then a few people have said, so no, I was going to go to, and somebody's back on D. Okay. This is actually something I've seen in the past few semesters. I've seen some people who start out on D and they say, no, I'm going to go to C. Then they feel shame and they go back to D, and then it's like, no. But the answer is C, okay? It's auto sum button on the standard toolbar and press enter. So this is basically asking if you want to add up something, and you could use the sum function, but the sum function is basically something you'd have to type in. You could have to equal sum, and you have to type in the parameters. And I will admit, I still do that. I very rarely use auto sum, but there is a shortcut in Excel. If you go to the standard toolbar, I believe it's insert is where you can go into and you can type it in. And I'm not going to spend too much time. I may spend a few seconds going over a few seconds in some of these questions going over something that's particularly interesting. I'm not going to go to Excel for every single one of these and do examples. But if you're curious about this and want to do examples, then you can take a look as we're going through this. All right. So C is our answer. Most people got that one. So let's go on to. You want to paste a formula result, but not the underlying formula to another cell. You would want to copy the cell with the formula, then paste the insertion point in the cell you want to copy to. What next? So basically, we're going to paste the result and not the formula. What do you do? All right, can't fool you guys. So yeah, I will say that this is a trick that's very valuable for multiple different reasons because you can actually paste part of a content of a cell. In this particular one, we're saying we want the result. So we're going to copy whatever the result is in the formula, and then we're going to copy to another cell and say paste values, because that's the result. We can do something very similar if we want to paste formulas. That will actually copy a formula over. Now, in many of our scenarios that we're going to encounter in this class, we won't be using the paste formulas simply because we'll be using something called relative cell references to copy formulas across. You'll hear me say this again when we do our first Excel assignment. Relative cell references are one of Excel's best features and going to be one of your worst enemies, depending on the circumstances. So relative cell references are great, and yet they're awful at the same time. And you might, how can that be? It's a little bit like how ice cream can be great and awful. Ice cream can be really, really great if you're enjoying it, and then the next day you step on the scale and just go like, okay, I regret my decisions. Okay, so yeah, same thing for relative cell references. All right, moving on. How do you change column width to fit the contents? So it's either A or B, and it looks like the consensus here for most of the class is going to be B, and that is correct. You want to double click on the right of the column heading, and it will autofill to the width. Now you do have to be careful with that because it will actually recognize anything that's in that column. So if you've got like a title header that's originated in that column and you want to orient it to everything that's below that, it will actually go to the title header width. And so sometimes you have to manually adjust this, but for the most part, it's an easy shortcut. An easy shortcut. There are 3 worksheets to every new workbook. And if you're in Excel right now, you will notice that our workbooks do not default open to 3 new worksheets. So this is going to be a very easy answer to the question. You can change that automatic number if you want to. That is a true statement. That is a true statement. You can go to options in Excel and you can actually go to the general tab and it will actually tell you a lot of things that you can tell or change from the default. And this is not just limited to the number of new worksheets that default open, but also the font size. Basically, a lot of the defaults are going to be given to you. Has anybody, I think something I noticed recently, has anybody noticed the change in font that occurred on the Truman State machines over the past year? So a year ago, it was defaulting to, I believe it was Calibri, and now it's on Aptos Narrow, okay? And these are the kind of things that I notice in my life, you know? I don't notice who wins the Academy Awards or who's in the Super Bowl, but I can tell you when font changes on Excel. It's like, wait a minute, there's a disturbance in the force. Yeah. All right. Pound means what is that? So this one is the cell is not wide enough, and that frequently happens when you actually change the size of the spreadsheet. So this is something I am going to share. I'm going to show in Excel, not this particular item, but this happens quite frequently with one of the things that I do quite a bit in Excel. So you notice here, I can type in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and it will auto fit to that. But if I change the size enough, eventually it will start showing pound symbols. Now, I actually had to manipulate that for that to happen because it was going to auto fit. But where does this happen more frequently? The answer is this happens a lot more frequently when you're zooming in and out on the size of the spreadsheets and making it smaller. Okay. And that I actually wanted to post out because you will notice I'm not manipulating the bar down here. Does anybody know how I'm doing this?
Control scroll.
Yeah, control scroll. Yeah, because you can hit control key and you can actually manipulate the scroll bar to make it larger and smaller. So didn't know that. That's something that I do quite frequently. And I only mention that not to encourage you to do it if you want to. If you want to do it, great. Okay. If you don't want to do it, that's fine too. It's all up to you. But you will see me do that a lot when we're going through Excel problems. You may wonder, how did he make it bigger? It's like a magic. Actually, the mystery is gone. The one thing I will tell you, and I will say this a lot for the Excel assignments we're going to do, is that do not share any of the secrets you learn in this class outside of this classroom. Okay. The mystique is gone if you do that. Like when we're going to learn how to do drop-down lists, you're going to show that to people in the real world, and they're going to be like, that is so cool. How do you do it? It says it's really, really hard. You'd never be able to learn. I'll tell you right now, it's very easy to do. Okay. But if you explain it to somebody, if you show them that it's really easy to do, then it's always lost, guys. Always lost. All right. Oops. This one. All right. To add a new row, click a cell in the row immediately above when you're on the new row. Is that true or false? Interestingly enough, this could be either true or false depending on the context you're looking at. If we're talking specifically about Excel and working in Excel, the answer is this is false. All right. But imagine that you copy a table and put it into Microsoft Word. Would it be true then? The answer is yes, you can actually do that in tables in Word. So for those of you who answer true, you're not wrong, okay? It just depends on the context we're talking about here. I will say I'm grateful that it's not going to be, that's not the way it is in Excel, because in my old age, I find myself randomly clicking on stuff without my thinking about it. And if I just randomly, if it added a new row every time I clicked on something, then I'd have like infinite rows. All right. Moving on. Which key do you press to group two or more non-adjacent worksheets? So how do you group two or more non-adjacent worksheets? Which key would you use? Some disparity in answers here, but still the majority does have it. It is control. So you'd hold down your control key and you would click on the worksheets you want to group. Now, if you wanted to group them adjacently, you could probably use the shift key. I'm pretty sure that you can do that. And then if you wanted to group everything all together, you can hold down control shift. That actually holds true for information that's in the spreadsheet as well. To copy an entire worksheet and all its data, you should click the worksheet tab on the first data or first worksheet tab of the sheet that you want to copy. Hold down shift, then drag the selected sheet along the row of sheet tabs. This reminds me of a CPA exam question. The vernacular is so challenging. You're just like, I don't know. I just lost, you lost me halfway through. That doesn't sound like what we would do if we wanted to copy a tab. And you're in fact right, it is not. Doesn't have to do anything to do with that. There's actually a few ways to do that. You can actually use the function of the toolbar. The easiest way I go about it is just go to the tab, right click, and then you have an option of copy or move. And it defaults to moving, but if you click on the copy, then you can create a copy of that. You can do that within the same worksheet, or you can do it in a different worksheet. Those are the options available to you. Which formula can add all the numeric values in a range of cells, ignoring those which are not numeric, and place the result in a different cell? I'll be surprised if anybody misses this one. Somebody's going to do it deliberately now just to make me surprised. Yep, there we go. Never let it be said that Truman State business students are not humorous. I'll look out for it to credit. I'm just going to throw Dr. Barnes off his game. Yeah, that's obviously the sum function. It's kind of the very first function that you learn when you're learning Excel. it possible to insert an image from a file into an Excel spreadsheet? That is in fact a true statement. You can actually import file images into a spreadsheet. Let's ask you a different question. It's related to this one. But if I use Paint or if I use a snipping tool to copy a piece of image, can I put that into Excel? Yes, I can. Do that as well. Okay. By the way, does everybody know how to use snipping tool in the classroom? Okay. Snipping tool will change your life. It will be something that will be very advantageous for you. So I encourage you to learn how to use that. We'll probably use that a few times. It's actually, you can find it under Windows search. Just type in snipping tool and it's a Windows tool. But basically that'll allow you to do screen captures very easily. I used to do it the good old way. I used to just like, okay, hold down the print screen key, copy it over to Paint, select the image I wanted to paint, and then copy that over there. Then somebody said, why don't you use snipping tool, Dr. Barnes? This was a student who did that. I learned something from my students. And I said, oh, it's a great idea. And that's what I've been doing ever since. And now whenever you actually hold down print screen, it just defaults to snipping tool. So somebody was a little bit behind on their times. Can Excel spreadsheet be used as the data source for a Word mail merge? Not a lot of word mail merging going on, I guess, but the answer to this one is yes, it can be. Okay. In fact, all of the Word packages can work with one another. You could actually use Access Database for a Word mail merge as well, but Excel is a lot more convenient. In fact, I do this every year when I send out BGS invitations, bidding and signet invitations. I actually have to do the Word mail merge. I use a template. I don't try to do it from scratch every single time, but I still do it, which gives me a little bit of technological pride. On an Excel sheet, the active cell is indicated by what? A lot of people default to none of the above, and I'm curious what the answer is if you don't think it's none of the above. Let's just take a look. The active cell, that sure looks like a wide dark border, unless you just want to say that's not really dark, Dr. Barnes. If that's the case, if that's your argument, then it could be none of the above.
Yes, it is a wide dark border with a small square in the bottom right corner.
Yeah, that's fair. Okay, that's fair. It's trying to get technical definitions in a online or a Microsoft or sorry, Excel quiz can be challenging. So yeah, could be A, so it could be A or could be D, depending on whether you think it's wide or not dark. And that's going to be a technicality we're not going to argue in this class. I'm just going to say everybody has their definition of it, and their definition is correct for their own needs. Now, a dotted border is in Excel. What does that usually represent? Copy. Yeah, something's being copied. Okay, so that's what we usually see of that. Good. Formula and function do the same thing. The formula and function are not the same thing. So we talked about formula. Example of a formula we've already talked about, or sorry, formula is basically anything that does an operation in a cell. Now, function would be an example like sum is a function, and we're going to talk about all different functions. Is it possible to have a formula without a function? Like if I say equals 1 plus 1, is that a formula? Yes. Okay. Does it have a function in it? Does not. Okay. So we can actually have one without the other. That being said, the vernacular, especially in my terms, tend to get misused. I almost actually did it just a second ago. I was trying to explain a formula, and I said some formula. No, it's not a formula. It's a function. And despite the ravings of this lunatic old man that's teaching this class, formula and function are not the same thing, and we need to know the functions are independent of those. Now, I will say functions will generally involve a formula or be used in a formula, but you can't have formulas without functions. So there is a relationship there. A little bit easier. Which symbol would you use to multiply items in Excel? It's been a long time since I've been in elementary school. Do you still use the X, the multiplier symbol in elementary school when you're doing mathematics? You know?
In elementary, they did X's still, but once we hit middle school, they started trying to teach us to migrate to the dots.
Interesting. Okay. All right. Yeah. So I want some consistency. I think Excel should lead the way. So Excel should actually have a program in elementary school say, all right, we're going to all do a star symbol so we can all get along. Okay. Because this was confusing for me when I first started learning Excel vernacular. Of course, when I was using Excel, it was back in the 1990s. So there's a lot of room for improvement on that. But yeah, the star symbol. All right. Last question. The formula, well, that formula is valid. I'm not going to try to repeat the formula. It looks like everybody thinks the formula is not valid. Oh, we got somebody who says the formula is valid. But those of you who say the formula is not valid, why is the formula not valid? There's no closing parentheses. Remember, if you have an open parentheses, you always have to pair closing parentheses. Sometimes Excel will do the work for you. Like in this one, I think if you type this in Excel, it would say, oh, they probably meant to put it in parentheses at the end, so I do that. Especially if you're using a function like sum, it'll close the parentheses for you. Sometimes it will give you an angry message saying your formula is not correct. Would you like us to complete this for you? And then sometimes it will just say pound NA and say it won't work for you. So it really depends on the circumstance, but visual cue, we can look at this and say that's the case. All right. Well, okay. So overall, pretty good job on Excel. I think the news. Now, I do want to reiterate, when we start doing our Excel work next week, I don't want you to expect that I'm going to teach you profound areas of new knowledge to start out with. There are definitely going to be some things. In fact, most of the things that we're going to start out with are things that you already know. Keep in mind that I have to reiterate on every level. So if you consider yourself to be very high knowledge of Excel, you may already know the information, and that's good. Okay, that means that's not something you have to relearn. I will have some very specific expectations for you for Excel on the exam, but we're not going to be doing Excel assignments where you're going to be reiterating things that you learned from BSAD 153. This is just for reflective purposes to make sure that you can use these tools effectively. And again, if there's something that I use, I will try to use it in context of a particular situation. So it's not just I'm putting formulas up there and say, isn't that formula cool? I'm going to try to show you specific scenarios in which we would use formulas for this. All right. Let's talk about AI. What do you guys say? So I promised you memes. I promised you memes, and I wasn't going to lie because next we have fun with AI. Now, like I said on the first day of class a few days ago, I am trying my best to learn about AI. I'm trying to consume a lot of content. I do not consider myself an expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm going to be learning along with you all in this course. I do have some knowledge in this area. I've spent a lot of time trying to learn new techniques and new mechanisms. I'm going to be trying to update those over the course of the semester. We will start out with something pretty basic when we do this. I believe it's next week. It may actually maybe a week notice week before we do it, because I think next week we've got chapter 1 and 2 homework due on Friday, and then we're going to do our first Excel on Friday. So we won't do our first AI assignment until week 3. But we're going to start out with prompt engineering when we start talking about that. And if you have some familiarity with that, then you already will hit the ground running. I don't particularly care whether you use ChatGPT or Copilot. If you have ChatGPT, you will need your own personal account for that. Copilot, you can actually you use your own account for Truman. We can actually sign in through our Microsoft license and use that. I strongly recommend that if you do use AI tools, be very, very wary of sharing personal information. While we try to make sure that none of the information that, while our license with Microsoft make sure that none of the information that we share gets produced externally, like they don't use it for external training purposes, that does not mean that Microsoft will not keep it for their own purpose, okay? So be very careful about sharing information and using that in your AI queries. That being said, this is going to be an interesting experience for us. So starting out with memes, let's talk about some things that you might want to know about AI that might be relevant. Okay. So this is an actual Facebook post from a little over a year ago. It said ChatGPT will forever change the profession of auditing, because I'm an auditing professor. So I said, explain agency theory to me in style of pirates. That kind of shows you where I started at with AI. I said, all right, I want you to explain agency theory to me in style of pirates. And I will tell you right now, the reason I put this on here is because ChatGPT nailed it. They crushed it on this one. So if you read this one, it actually is a story about how pirate captains and the people who they serve them, the crew, don't necessarily have the same interest in alignment. So you actually have to try to align their interest to make sure that they're consistent, so that the crew doesn't mutiny and take over the ship. And I was like, and a lot of my friends who were looking at this were just kind of like, wow, this is amazing. This is actually a really good explanation of agency theory. So yeah, ChatGPT can do some pretty impressive things. AI can do some impressive things. Moving on. Some things that it does not do well. It does not do accounting well, at least early on. This is a pretty early one, okay? So Here's an example of how, so when you buy equipment, what cash, or with cash, what do you credit? Here's the example of the entry that ChatGPT gave us. Now, again, we're not going to focus too much on journal entries in this course. We'll have some, but anybody see a problem with this particular journal entry? Yeah, it looks like that cash has been debited. So when you debit cash, is that an increase or a decrease in cash? Yeah, it'd be really nice if we could buy equipment by giving ourselves cash. That would be really, really great, but unfortunately, that's not the way accounting works. So something we're going to learn about AI tools, particularly large language models, is if you ask them to do something it does not know how to do, it will not tell you, I don't know. It will say, hey, here's how you do it, and it will make something up completely, totally nonsensical. And that was, this is an early version. This is a pretty early query, definitely on a ChatGPT 3.5, okay? So here's another one. I need to depreciate land. What's the journal entry? And yeah, ChatGPT is just kind of like, well, let me help you with that. So it kind of jumps in and says, we're going to debit accumulate depreciation land and then credit the land account. There's a couple of problems with this. Let's talk about the basic journal entry problem. When you book a depreciation entry, do you debit accumulated depreciation? No, that's a contra asset account. Okay, accumulated depreciation is a contra asset. That would be the credit. You would debit depreciation expense. Everybody remember that? But there's a much bigger problem with this particular issue. What is the much bigger problem for this particular question?
Crediting their land.
Well, they're crediting land, but yeah. So, how many people have seen depreciation entries for land? We don't depreciate land. Land is not a depreciable asset. It does not lose value over time. Okay, you could impair it if you think like something happened, like say for example there was an accident and like maybe an oil spill or some sort of fuel leak and it would reduce the value of land. You can impair it, but we don't depreciate land as we use it. It's land. Okay, there's the value of whatever you purchase it at. So yeah, we don't actually depreciate land. There's actually a sub story to this. Okay, ChatGPT has since learned it's from its mistakes, and so we had a graduate student last semester who was asking ChatGPT, what is the journal entry for depreciating land? Or actually not this, like what is the tax treatment for depreciation of land? I believe is a little bit more specific. And ChatGPT jumped in and said, hey, here's the deal. We can't depreciate land. It's not allowed in an accounting treatment. He goes, but I really want to. And then it said, oh, well, according to tax code such and such, and just went on this long blurb about how you could go depreciate land. So if you push hard enough and say, yeah, okay, this is something I want to do, even if it's not allowed, it will probably try to accommodate you because it really wants to make you happy. It really wants to make you happy, those LLMs. Okay. All right. This is one my GTRA. We were preparing a demonstration of AI for the business faculty. And actually, no, this is mine. Okay, this is mine. How many R's in the word strawberry? Our strawberry contains 2 R's. Now, before we move on, how many R's are in strawberry? There's 3. Okay, there's 3. Okay. Are you sure about that? Yes, I'm sure there are 2 R's in strawberry. Please check again. I double checked and indeed there are 2 R's in strawberry. Interesting. I count 3 R's. Break it down. Strawberry spelled S-T-R-A-W-B-R-R-Y. Oh, yeah, you're right. There's 3 R's in strawberry. My apologies on the earlier mistake. So something very interesting, we're going to explore this a lot. One of the primary tools that we're going to use for AI is we're going to use what's called large language models. All right. And the way large language models work at a very basic level is they're like fancy predictive text on your phone. Has anybody ever done that on your messenger on your phone? You just kind of like type in something like Dr. Barnes is, and then you type in the middle button of what the predictive text is, and it probably says something really rude. Yeah. So at least, yeah, not for me. I did that for Dr. Caden, and it was not very nice. So yeah, that's basically what large language models do. Is they're kind of doing predictive text, but much more complex versions of this. So they tend to be very, very bad at math, because they're not doing actual computations. Like you think computer would be able to do this because that's what we think computers do. But a large language model is just using, like going online and saying what should be the next statement. And apparently enough people have said there's 2 R's in strawberry that it's going to say, yeah, according to everything I've ever read and ever seen, 2 R's in strawberry, because you see the two R's in the berry and the lines. All right. This one is a very recent one, okay? And this one's a very, very, very recent, interesting one. So we were at a training session right before the semester started, right semester break, and we were talking about some utilization of Copilot in our marketing materials. And so Dr. Caden, my boss, does everybody know Dr. Caden? If you don't know Dr. Caden, I will talk a lot of trash about Dr. Caden, but I have a high deal of respect, okay? But she's tax tracked, so that's the reason why I have to talk a lot of trash about her. It's actually a requirement of my job. So Dr. Caden was saying, well, we could actually just put your face on Facebook and we could use Copilot fancy the image up, so like put your face in a snow globe or something like that. And we started talking and said, I wonder if I actually pull photos from the site. So I actually said to Copilot, says, can you show me a picture of Michael Barnes, who works at Truman State University? And I want you guys to take a close look at me. This is me, okay? All right. So it starts out, it says, Dr. Michael Barnes, an associate professor of accounting in the graduate program at Truman State University. That's true. He's been BS and Master of Accountancy from University of Oklahoma, PhD from Oklahoma State University, or pursuing his doctorate, works as an auditor, forensic analyst at Dallas, Texas. Research focused on gamification process and accounting education. I enjoy cooking, life, and gaming. That's almost verbatim what's on the Truman website, but all that statement is correct, okay? But you notice we're missing something right now. We've asked for a picture. What's the next step? All right, Dr. Barnes received recognition for teaching methods. Okay, the more information, more detail associated with that. But for the most part, it's provided text. But you'll notice we're still missing something really important, okay? But it did provide a picture. Here's Dr. Barnes. I don't know what to tell you guys. That's not me. Yeah, I'm 95% sure it's not me. 95% sure it's not me. Yeah. So, well, basically, when we talk about these are kind of hallucinations. All right. And the idea being that AI tools will do their best, but they won't necessarily come up with the correct answer all the time. All right. So I thought it might be fun. We've got about 13 minutes left in class, and I've got a few more things that I want to share with you guys. But using an AI tool of your choice, okay. I want to see if you can write a prompt to the tool that is not able to correctly answer. Okay. So you can use Copilot. Just go to copilot.microsoft.com and sign in with your Truman State account, and you can do that. But there's a few things I want to see if you can figure out some ways to mess with the AI tool. So was anybody able to get some hallucinations going? Probably some easy ones. You could probably just say like how many R's are in strawberry or something like that. Is everybody pretty happy with the results that they got from their AI input?
Ask it to give me legal advice.
Legal advice.
It did immediately mess up the how many R's in strawberry.
Very bad at reading.
So there's a book that I read, and when I say read, if you ever hear me say I read a book, I don't actually read books anymore. I just listen to audiobooks, but I guess that's kind of the same thing. And it's called Co-Intelligence by Ethan Mollick. And you'll hear me refer to this book quite a bit in this course. And Ethan Mollick is actually a professor of entrepreneurship at the Wharton School in University of Pennsylvania. And his book is probably going to become outdated very quickly, but this is a lot of what the basis of what we're going to be talking about in this particular course is. And one of the things that he talked about before he wrote the books, he was talking about how we should view large language models. And he says the thing about LLMs that make them unintuitive is that analogizing them to having a sci-fi AI is less useful than thinking of them as infinite copies of some guy named Steve. A grad student who's great at coding and art and is widely read but makes up stuff when it's pressed. All right. So there's some very interesting features of AI or AI tools, especially large language models we need to be aware of. Now, one of the things that we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about some rules that Ethan Mollick has in his use of AI. We're going to talk about some things that we need to approach. But one of the most important things that we need to remember is that these LLM tools, these AI tools, they will do the work that you tell them to do, but you do need to be contextually, or you need to provide them context for that. So when I was working on that AI prompt that I mentioned that we were doing last week before the semester started, my dean, Dr. Prasad, he actually said, well, it probably comes back in the style of 10th graders. Well, I'm a little bit smarter than that. I basically said I'm a college professor with tenure who is trying to determine a prompt for an improvement source in the School of Business, and gave it a lot of information about my role and my scenario. And I wanted to say, take the role that I'm currently in and write prompt from that perspective. So this is going to be kind of our first goal when we talk about prompt engineering, is telling the AI tool to do what you want it to do. Now, there's a lot of boundaries on this, and you have to be very, very careful with this because it sounds very simple. It sounds like okay, well, as long as we define what it's going to do, it can do it for us. There's a couple of parameters we need to be very aware of. First of all, in some scenarios, it may not be capable of that, right? I will say that being an associate professor at accounting at a liberal arts university in the Midwest, there's not a lot of people who actually meet that definition, at least compared to the people in the world. So having that frame of reference can be a challenge. particularly if you find a frame of reference that's not very explicit, it's not got a lot of information associated with it, it will do its best to make up information that sounds like somebody in that realm, but it's not going to necessarily come up with the correct information. So that's the first thing, okay? And the easy answer to that particular question is that if you ask any prompts from an LLM, if you ask any prompts from an AI, you need to have some idea of the result that you're going to come up with. So you do need to be very thorough in checking and making sure that it's consistent and it's capable. So that's the first caveat. The second one is we're going to get to the point where we start talking like to AIs and people, we're going to start talking and it's going to sound like another person talking to us. And I want you to resist the urge, no matter how much it might seem like this is an AI tool, this is another human being on the other end, to think of it as a human being. We're going to try to talk to it like it is a human being, but we need to resist the idea that it is a human being. And I'm not saying this because I'm really worried that we're going to go down a rabbit hole like some of those AI movies that come out, like the Scarlett Johansson film, and that I think it was called Her, that's what it's called. And there's a new one with Megan Fox, that's like she's like a robot. So yeah, we need to try to avoid that. That's not what I'm worried about. But the simple point is that AI will respond the way that we actually prompt it, and that's actually going to be characteristic of if we prompt it like another human being. If you go and you yell at somebody, like if I come into class and I'm really angry and start yelling at you, I'm going to expect a different response from you than if I come in and say, "Hey, how are you guys doing?" and I tell jokes. You'll notice I will not come in and will not yell at you because that's not feedback that I want. Okay, it's not the feedback I'm trying to facilitate. You can do that same thing with an AI. If you tell it a joke, it will joke back with you, or it will accommodate you. If you get angry at it, it may cut off the connection, which I'm assuming that's why you stopped talking, got angry at you. Yeah, so, but it will respond in kind in that regard. So it's something important to keep in mind. Now, as far as causes of hallucination, some things that we need to be aware of moving forward, there are some things that we are going to work with. And our next task, the one we're going to start with, is going to be on prompt engineering. But I want to talk about some things that we do need to keep in mind, because this is probably going to be our first slide when we start our next discussion. And I'm going to say, be very, very careful of trying to put in information and expecting results when you have ambiguous prompts, lack of information in that area. You're expecting longer responses. You make complex queries, uncommon scenarios, use biased or untrained data, over reliance on model confidence. Okay, these last few are probably not going to be as common because we're going to be using a wide-in database, but particularly it's going to be very, very important that we're not ambiguous in our prompts, and we need to ask questions or we already have some idea of what it is we're looking for. I will say it's very hard to avoid long responses, and that's something that the AI tools, no matter how I told them, I said in 10 words or less, and it's giving me 20-word responses. So it doesn't do very well with very numeric specific information. But you can try to avoid longer responses. I would say if you have complex tasks, that you should break them down into smaller tasks, into smaller bite-sized pieces, and work from that. That's just something to keep in mind. The great news is once we actually learn to master these tools, we're going to open up a whole new world for us. It's going to give us a lot more possibilities. I'm not just talking about making this course easier. I'm talking about making your lives easier. There are some doom and gloom scenarios. Everybody's kind of concerned about AI taking over the world. I don't think that we're on the scope of that happening yet. If you are worried about it, go back and look at some of my memes where AI is taking over, and it's still auto-correcting Marty, April, so like that. We're not quite there yet, but we are going to find that it's going to improve the things that we're going to do, and we're going to try to explore that over the coming semester, try to figure that out. But yeah, so I think that probably does it for today. I will see you all on Wednesday. Have a great Monday off. I'll see you all on Wednesday for our next class.